I saw a while ago Tucker Carlson interviewing Cenk Uygur, he with the sweaty forehead, and promoting dropshite news, I call it, which is openly pro-Hamas.
It's Marxist.
Openly Marxist, pro-Hamas. And here you have Tucker Carlson promoting it as a reliable source of news. Anti-Semitism is always the easiest way to spot the horseshoe theory. Just briefly help me understand, how have the far left and the far right, the woke right, what is their ideology and what way are they aligned on the whole Israel-Jews issue?
Well, they're aligned because they're both using the Soviet-originated talking points of Israel committing genocide and ethnic cleansing and apartheid against the Palestinians. So the entire left-wing narrative has now been completely consumed by these factions of the right. And it's not just dropsite news. You have characters that, self-declared leftists or even democratic socialists, like Max Blumenthal and Glenn Greenwald and Norman Finkelstein and Bassam Youssef, that idiotic comedian from Egypt, that are now these
None of these
darlings.
comedians are very funny.
and yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of so-called comedians, right? And these have become darlings of the woke right now. And not just Tucker Carlson, but Candace and Steve Bannon and Matt Gaetz. They feature these people on their show and they lie to their viewers. They lie by omission because they don't tell their viewers that these people are not actually conservative, but they're endorsing them on their shows. Tucker does this with every other guest he has now on his show. He pretends they're conservatives. He had George Galloway, the head of the Socialist Workers' Party in Britain, on his show, and he said this is one of the most conservative politicians in Britain. This is how the right is now,
Socially,
new right.
Yes.
The new right is now channeling this left-wing agenda in foreign policy, but also increasingly in economics and trade and even immigration into the right. And they're infecting the right to actually become left-wing populist, much in the vein of Bernie Sanders. So talk about the horseshoe theory. This is very, very, very sinister, because you literally have left-wing populism that is gaining purchase in certain right-wing circles. Look at somebody like Jackson Hinkle. He's a MAGA communist. That's what he calls himself.
Is that an oxymoron?
Seems to be a complete paradox, right? And yet there's now trends like this that are happening. So
okay, so look, on the issue of Jews in Israel, we're seeing the far right and the far left linking up around the same Soviet ideology of Israel as an apartheid,
you
genocidal,
do see profound
colonial.
differences.
Well,
there is the whole theological thing that's happening on the right, which we haven't gotten into.
I'm coming from different places. On the Jewish Israel issue specifically, they believe the same arguments basically about Israel and the Jews being the root of all the problems and everything that's wrong in the world, and that you need to solve it in order to redeem the world. It was classic anti-Semitism. In what other ways are we seeing the far left and the far right linking up, and are we seeing that turning into any actual political partnerships, or are these two separate echo chambers that are just beginning to cross-pollinate at the moment?
So you see them linking up in terms of foreign policy increasingly, right? You have activist groups like Code Pink, right? Pro-CCP, so-called anti-war, radical feminist groups that are now joining forces with former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? Or you have Congressman Thomas Massey, who's kind of like a Pat Buchanan revivalist. He's he's much in the same vein of the libertarian paleo conservatives in terms of his policies. He's joining he's co-authoring and co-sponsoring bills with people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and AOC and people like that. So yeah, this is happening in ways that are not even necessarily related to Israel and Jews. It's also happening in certain economic projects, like I told you, the whole Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders vision for economics is which is a much more kind of centralized, federally controlled capitalist system, is now gaining purchase.
Wait, hang on. If that's what the woke right wants, and economically they're aligned, what's the difference with the woke left at all? On what do they disagree?
It depends, right? Because it also depends which faction of the woke right you're talking about, right? There are certain figures under the woke right that I wouldn't necessarily say want a Elizabeth Warren style of market capitalism or anything like that, but some of them do, and some of them are very prominent figures. So it just depends. It's not all of the woke right. There's a lot of nuances here, but some of them are increasingly becoming sympathetic to illegal immigrants. Okay, you even had Tucker Carlson in his newsletter like excoriating ICE for the killing of Renee Good, which she kind of became like another George Floyd figure in America. So even on issues like immigration, you see some of these people on the right that are lining up with the left. You obviously foreign policy completely. That's totally cooked. And then even on issues such as like civil liberties. I mean, the left really is not. They're not constitutionally oriented. They're much more likely to bend the rules to fit whatever they believe is the virtuous right thing to do. They don't look at the founding of our country and the principles of which America is based, which are largely biblical. They don't see this as rules or guidelines which all Americans must abide by in order to live in this nation. They have their own kind of their own ideological ideas about virtue and vice and right and wrong, and that is how they believe America should be organized. American conservatives, I mean, it's in the name, conservative. They are trying to preserve something. They are trying to preserve the founding of America, the founding vision, the constitutional vision. But many of these figures on the new right, or the identitarian right, are just like the left in that they're neo-revolutionary or neo-reactionary. They want to tear down these structures, as I mentioned, and they want a new America. Now it might be a fascist America, not a communist America. But like you said, the horseshoe, like fascism and communism are two different sides of the same coin. Yes, there are differences. In communism, you have the state owning all of the institutions. In fascism, you have private, enterprise, but you have the state controlling them. So there are nuances here and there, but they're both totalitarian systems. So they mirror each other. And in both systems, the Jew is scapegoated and discriminated against.
Help me understand where this came from, because there is, I think sometimes, especially in Israel, a story we tell ourselves that is comforting, that says, oh, it's all Qatari money. Qatar has bought these people off. Qatar has just flooded the place with bots and has bought people off. And so it's an artificial phenomenon that's funded by Qatari oil money. Mm. Is it?
No, and that's not true. I mean, obviously, Qatar is a major player here, and they are doing everything you said. But to act as if they're the only player or that they somehow artificially created this division is just a very myopic and superficial view of what's going on. And it's not even how information warfare or narrative warfare looks. It's not how the Soviet Union operated when they were developing and employing all of these techniques. Like, the way it works is you exploit real divisions in society. You find real things that are happening, real schisms, real figures who are pushing things that can divide America, polarize America, or figures who are just saying things that these America's enemies agree with, and then they amplify that. They amplify things that are already there, and they weaponize them, and they magnify them, and that is what is happening here. These divisions and schisms in America are real. People are angry about foreign entanglements and all of the taxpayer dollars that we have been sending abroad to deal with our wars. This is something that Israel doesn't really understand, because all the wars that Israel has fought have been wars for its survival. They've been existential battles, but that is not the case with America. So, Trump is very anti-neocon. He's anti the neoconservative project of aggressive interventionism and nation building from the top down, the spread of democracy, because we've seen that it has not worked in so many cases, and it's just drained our resources, cost us the lives of our troops, led to more radicalism in the regions, and it's all on our dime. So I think my point is that Israelis need to understand that Americans are like the diagnosis of much of the woke right is correct. Not all of it, but when they are identifying the problems here, much of it is true. And we need to understand that. We need to understand like why they're angry and you know, like the corruption in our country and all of that kind of stuff. Their answer is what is so problematic, right? And where they go for you know, who they go to blame for it and to scapegoat for it.